The United Nations Special Envoy for Afghanistan has urged the world to keep money flowing into the country despite concerns over a Taliban government.
Billions of assets and donor funds have been frozen by members of the international community. The understandable purpose is to deny these funds to the de facto Taliban administration. The inevitable effect, however, will be a severe economic downturn that could throw many more millions into poverty and hunger, may generate a massive wave of refugees from Afghanistan, and indeed set Afghanistan back for generations.
Deborah Lyons said that safeguards must be created to ensure that the transferred money will be spent where it is needed and not misused by de facto authorities. UN envoy added that there are credible allegations the Taliban carried out reprisal killings despite their promises of general amnesty. She said the premises of the United Nations in Afghanistan have been respected for the most part. She, however, stressed that the world body is increasingly worried by a growing number of harassments and intimidations against national staff of the United Nations. Joining us now from Ontario is Jason Unruhe, political commentator. For more on the story. Hello, Jay. Hope you're safe and doing well out there. Your thoughts on the UN saying that, look, it is really of utmost importance right now that Afghanistan, the country, does not get choked off financially.
Well, that's certainly a very important situation, or a very important point to make at this time. You know, just because the Western powers don't actually like the Taliban or the way the Taliban does business or the fact that they lost the war to the Taliban, this is absolutely no reason to punish the people of Afghanistan. In fact, it would be a very heartless measure to simply cut off aid to the poor simply because you don't like who the government is. I mean, this is what we're supposed to believe, that the whole point of going to war in Afghanistan was to, fight terrorism and liberate the Afghani people. Well, there's nothing very liberating about going hungry or not having any medical treatment available for anyone who needs it. In fact, withholding these would definitely show the true intention of the United States, and that it was only intended to control the country, and many of the other Western powers as well, such as the UK. Their only real intention was to gain control of the country. So all their concern for the regular everyday Afghans that they claimed they were trying to liberate has suddenly gone completely out the window. It is no longer a concern of theirs so long as they're trying to foment unrest in the country. And that's what I believe that this is really about. This is about cutting off aid, cutting off food, cutting off medical supplies to create a crisis inside of Afghanistan in order to destabilize the incoming Taliban government. Well, this would certainly go against some of even the most basic fundamental understandings of human rights, that you don't punish the poor just to get at the elites, or at least just the government of the country. But I think that's what this is really about. This is about punishing the Taliban for having won the war, essentially, by trying to foment unrest in the country by making the most poor suffer.
And this policy of collective punishment, Jay, it's prevalent with a lot of adversaries of the U.S., Venezuela, Iran, North Korea. You have regular people that are apolitical, just want to have a normal life, being punished because there's a row between Washington and their particular government.
No, essentially that's a very common thing used by the United States, this collective punishment of hurting all people in a country just because the United States doesn't like something about that country. I mean, often the United States paints the people of these countries as being victims of their government, while turning around and punishing those very same people with sanctions. For example, they claim that Venezuela is an evil totalitarian state and that it's oppressing its own people, making their lives miserable. Yet What's really making their lives miserable is the actual sanctions that have been placed on the country, preventing the country from being able to function normally. This is not just goes for Venezuela. This goes for the DPRK. It goes for Iran. This goes for many countries around the world whose only real crime is not being subservient to U.S. power in the region, not to mention globally as well, for essentially not being the tools of U.S. imperialism for wanting their own right to self-determination, etc. And very much as you can criticize the Taliban for many things, at least Afghanistan has the right to determine its own destiny, free from this kind of foreign influence, and let's be honest, actually kind of foreign control. But that's the way the U.S. has always done things, to try to punish countries for essentially not being under their yoke. And it's particularly vicious in the case of Afghanistan, considering that they just recently lost the war to them.
Thank you, Jason. Stay safe. Always a pleasure to have you on from Ontario, Canada. Jason Unruhe there joining us.